There is an island that separates two extreme worlds. On one side, jungle, tourism, and idyllic beaches. On the other, a dark land where something as everyday as cooking has wiped trees off the map, leaving the country exposed to the fury of nature. Here, 20 people are able to hide inside a car to try to cross that line and change their lives. A border marked by a river that today serves as an escape, and where many women wash their bodies in secret because there is no other option. Join us in this new video from Uncensored World to explore an island split in two, one where voodoo is a religion and even zombies exist by law, and another where faith decides what can be shown and what cannot. Let's get started. In the heart of the Caribbean Sea, there is an island that functions like no other in the world. An almost straight line separates two very different worlds. It is not an infinite wall or a natural chasm, although the wall does exist and we will soon discover it. It is a border drawn by human decisions that still today continue to mark how people live on each side. On one side is Haiti, now considered the poorest country in the Americas, a place where survival is a daily victory. But what few people know is that during the 18th century, this same territory was exactly the opposite, the richest colony on the American continent, the engine of the Caribbean, a factory of wealth that fed Europe for decades. And on the other side is the Dominican Republic, one of the most desirable tourist destinations on the planet. Luxury hotels, picture-perfect beaches, relative stability, and an international image associated with relaxation and enjoyment. The question is inevitable. How can such different realities exist on the same island? To begin to understand this, we must look beyond the landscape, which is also very different, and observe the people. Although they share an island, many of them do not share the same origins. In Haiti, most of the population is directly descended from Africans who were forcibly brought there during the colonial era. In the Dominican Republic, the mix is different. Spanish heritage, African roots, and a Taino presence that is still part of the cultural identity. They share territory, but not the same historical origins. Soon we will approach the line that divides the island, because that is where these differences cease to be history and become everyday life. This border is home to some of the most extreme realities in the entire Caribbean, situations that do not appear in tourist brochures and that mark thousands of people from the moment they are born. Realities that help us understand why the origins of both sides are so different. One of them has to do with something as basic as bringing a child into the world. In Haiti, the lack of hospitals, medical resources, and transportation forces many women to give birth at home without professional assistance, relying solely on the experience of other women or on luck. Others, seeking a modicum of safety, try to cross the border while pregnant in the hope of giving birth in a hospital on the Dominican side. But here comes one of the realities that most surprises those who visit this island for the first time. Even if these children are born in hospitals in the Dominican Republic, they will never be considered Dominican. Being born there does not grant them any automatic rights, any nationality, or full legal recognition. The difference is brutal. A Dominican born in the Dominican Republic is Dominican from the first second of life. A Haitian born in the same place, in the same delivery room, is caught in a legal limbo. They do not officially belong to the country where they were born, and often cannot be easily recognized by their parents' country either. As you can see on a shared island, even birth marks an invisible border. Some children come into the world with a country, and others come into the world without one. And this is just one of the many realities that exist a few meters from the line that divides the island. The difference can be heard even before it can be seen. In Haiti, Haitian Creole is spoken, a language born of resistance, mixed with French, the language of the elite and the colonial heritage of this country. Meanwhile, in the Dominican Republic, Spanish is spoken, the language of the former colonial power, which has been the common language for centuries. On this island, two people can be separated by just a few meters, yet still be unable to understand each other without an intermediary, physically close, but culturally very far apart. But the real divide began much earlier on the other side of the ocean. Haiti was a French colony, and the French colonial model was based on the extraction of resources, prioritizing obtaining as much as possible over the long-term development of the territory. The Dominican Republic, for its part, was a Spanish colony. Spain also exploited the island, but in a different way, less intensively, leaving spaces where control was not absolute. But this border, in reality, does not begin here. It begins in Europe. For decades, the western part of the island, now Haiti, produced immense quantities of sugar, coffee, and wealth. But that wealth did not stay there. It left on ships bound for France while the enslaved population barely survived. And then something happened that changed the history of the world. Enslaved people rebelled and won. Haiti became the first nation on the planet created by former slaves who achieved their freedom by force, a historic triumph that inspired many other peoples and terrified the colonial powers. But that victory came at an invisible price. France forced the new country to pay a huge debt in exchange for recognizing its independence. The debt was so large that for generations, almost everything Haiti produced left the country to pay it off. For more than a century, a huge portion of the national income was not invested here. It was sent abroad. For many families, this meant suffocating taxes, constant fees, and a permanent feeling that nothing really belonged to them. Not even a house. In Haiti, for decades, owning a home did not mean real security, because the state needed to collect money by any means necessary to meet payments that came from far away. That is why freedom did not come completely. Or rather, it came mortgaged, and remained so until just a few decades ago. Meanwhile, on the other side of the island, development followed a different path. It was not a perfect or fair process for everyone, but it was more oriented toward building an economy based on tourism, services, and foreign investment. Over time, this allowed for the construction of hospitals and schools, the creation of jobs, and the generation of an image of stability that attracted money from abroad. That does not mean that the Dominican population lives without difficulties. As you will see, there is also poverty, neglected neighborhoods, and precarious work here. But unlike Haiti, many people have more real options. Over time, those decisions and differences began to show even in the land, in how it was cultivated and protected, and above all, in how it was depleted. Something happened here that not only changed people's destinies, but also began to transform the color of the soil. Before we get to that, we'll ask you a quick question. Do you think that where you are born determines your destiny? Or is it the decisions you make? Write your answer in the comments as we continue, because now we're going to see how history, poverty, and necessity ended up literally stripping this island bare. While the Dominican Republic boasts rainforests, turquoise beaches, and dense forests, in Haiti, the landscape tells a very different story. In Haiti, deforestation has left completely bare hillsides, hills that look like open scars, and valleys that fight the same battle against erosion every year. Where there used to be trees, now there is dust. Where there used to be shade, today there is relentless sun. That's why, while the Dominican side remains green and full of life, Haiti has a much drier and more extreme landscape. Where one is touristy and paradisiacal, the other is unpredictable, harsh, and deeply raw. But this desolate geography is not just a whim of the climate. It is also a clear reflection of the wounds of its past and the daily struggle to stay afloat in a world that has rarely been fair here. If we look at the human side, there is one fact that changes everything. Haiti has one of the highest population densities in the entire Caribbean. In a territory of just under 30,000 square kilometers, there are more than 11 million people, many of them concentrated in cities and hills with little infrastructure, where growth was faster than any planning. On the other side of the island, in the Dominican Republic, the territory is almost twice as large. It has 48,671 square kilometers, compared to the 27,750 square kilometers of Haiti. But the population is almost the same. That difference in space changes everything. The same number of people spread over almost twice the territory means less pressure on the land and more possibilities for organizing basic services, even if they do not reach everyone equally. To understand this better, imagine two families of the same size living in very different homes. In the Dominican Republic, it is common for 4 or 5 people to share a medium-sized apartment with regular access to running water, electricity, and essential services. In Haiti, on the other hand, 8 or even 10 people may live crammed into a much smaller space, without water in the home and with constant power cuts, when there is electricity. This multiplied human pressure on a small territory not only affects how people live, but also how they survive. Every square meter counts. In Haiti, cities grew too fast, without sufficient resources, and without the capacity to absorb millions of people seeking to survive as best they could, while the weight of historical debt prevented investment in hospitals, water networks, or stable energy systems. But the price of that history is not only seen in poverty, it is seen from the air, and even more so in the daily lives of its people. The result is a country where the basics are never guaranteed. Cooking, lighting a house, or preserving food becomes a daily problem that each family must solve on its own. And here comes a reality that has to do with the color of this country: charcoal. For decades, charcoal has been the main source of energy in Haiti, out of sheer necessity. When there is no electricity, no gas, and no affordable alternatives, the only option for cooking in Haiti is to burn wood. This is how, tree after tree, hill after hill, the country lost its forests in order to survive another day. Today, a large part of the population in Haiti still depends on charcoal to survive, not out of habit but out of sheer necessity. Because although it may seem strange to many, this daily use of trees is directly related to much of the natural devastation suffered by the country. Without trees, there is no protection. And without protection, nature no longer forgives mistakes. Everything works like a chain reaction. First, the trees disappear, then the hills are left bare, the soil becomes fragile, and the earth loses its ability to absorb water. When torrential rains arrive, the water no longer seeps in slowly. It rushes uncontrollably down the mountains, carrying mud, crops, and even entire villages. And when hurricanes arrive, the same ones that hit the entire island in this region of the world, they find Haiti to be a completely exposed territory, with no roots to hold the soil in place and no forests to cushion their force. Meanwhile, in the Dominican Republic, the terrain is much better prepared to withstand both rains and hurricanes. That is why phenomena that cause limited damage elsewhere become real catastrophes in Haiti. Flash floods, landslides, and entire communities forced to start from scratch over and over again. Because the land can no longer defend itself. If you've made it this far without looking at your phone, leave a like. It costs you nothing and helps the channel a lot. And as if all this were not enough, another invisible but constant factor adds to this fragility. The Earth moves. The entire island shared by both countries is located in an active seismic zone. The same tectonic plates pass under Haiti and the Dominican Republic. But the difference lies in what happens when the Earth trembles. In Haiti, the lack of infrastructure, anti-seismic regulations, and emergency resources has meant that earthquakes have devastating consequences. The country is much less prepared to withstand them. The clearest example occurred in the early 2000s. A magnitude 7 earthquake that lasted less than half a minute. But it was enough to change everything. The epicenter was located just a few dozen kilometers from the capital. The earth shifted several centimeters. Landmark buildings were reduced to ruins in a matter of seconds, not only because of the force of the tremor, but also because of fragile construction and a lack of safety measures. For days, aftershocks kept the entire country on edge. It wasn't just the fear of another tremor. It was the constant feeling that the ground, like life itself, could give way at any moment. In the Dominican Republic, where earthquakes have also been recorded, the impact is usually less severe. More recent construction, structural controls, and greater response capacity allow for better absorption of these blows from nature. although the risk never completely disappears. And when earthquakes are compounded by a land without trees, without protection, and without room for error, what comes is not silence, it is chaos. Thus, on the same island, two countries live completely different realities, one relatively protected, and the other totally exposed to the fury of the Caribbean. Even the names seem to tell this same story. Haiti comes from the Taino language and means mountainous land. For the island's first inhabitants, this place was sacred, full of caves, mountains, and a deep connection to the spiritual. That relationship with the land, with the invisible, and with forces beyond control never completely disappeared. It lives on in the culture, in beliefs, and in the way of understanding the world. Dominican Republic, on the other hand, takes its name from Christian tradition and European heritage, a name associated with order, structure, and a more institutionalized idea of faith. Two names, two ways of looking at the same island. In some places it is barely noticeable. A road, a river, a change of language. In others, the line is harder to see. Military checkpoints, watchtowers, and a concrete and steel wall that is now over 4 meters high in some sections. A physical attempt to separate two realities that, in practice, continue to clash every day. Later, we will enter this barrier erected to curb desperation. We will see how people live on both sides, and why there are people willing to hide in a car, cross a river at night, or lose everything just to cross it. But first, let's go to the place where all these differences come face to face, where poverty, trade, survival, and tension coexist on a daily basis. Let's go to the border. The border between Haiti and the Dominican Republic runs north to south across the island for almost 400 kilometers. An irregular line that crosses mountains, rivers, dirt roads, and towns split in two. It is not a straight or clean border. It is a scar that adapts to the terrain, winding between hills and valleys, and in many places seems more like an idea than a real barrier. In recent years, the Dominican Republic has begun to erect a border wall in several of these sections, a concrete and wire mesh structure that exceeds 4 meters in height in some areas, equipped with watchtowers, cameras, and permanent controls. A barrier designed to close off the most frequently used crossing points, the places where necessity pushes hardest. One of these key points is the river that for centuries has served as a natural border between the two countries, the Massacre River. At first glance, it is just a narrow river. In some sections, it can be crossed on foot. But this river separates two realities that have little to do with each other. Its name, although today many associate it with more recent events, is actually much older and dates back to the colonial era, when Haiti and the Dominican Republic did not yet exist as countries. At that time, the entire island was known as Hispaniola and was under European rule. At first, it was almost entirely controlled by Spain. But over the centuries, other powers began to dispute the territory. During the 17th and early 18th centuries, the western part of the island, what is now Haiti, became an unstable area, frequented by buccaneers, privateers, and French settlers. There were no clear borders. There were no defined states. There were only constant conflicts over control of the land and trade routes. It was in this context that a particularly violent confrontation took place near this river, during one of those colonial disputes between Spanish forces and French groups. From that episode on, the river became known as the Massacre River, not as a national border, because it did not yet exist, but as a reminder of the massacres that took place at that time. Decades later, France would consolidate its control over the west of the island, while Spain would maintain control over the east. Over time, that division would eventually transform into two different countries, Haiti and the Dominican Republic. So, when we see this river today marking the border between two modern states, we are actually observing a border born of the clash between empires, long before these countries existed. If you are interested in stories like this, subscribe. Because at Uncensored World, we travel where others prefer not to look. Today, the river has other meanings. It is a border, a source of water, and also a place of passage. For many people, especially on the Haitian side, this river is not just a line separating countries. It is also a place of daily survival. In places where there is no running water or basic facilities, the river serves several functions at once. Clothes are washed here, utensils are cleaned, and when there is no other option, it is also used for personal hygiene. In this context, bathing in the Massacre River becomes a necessity due to the lack of alternatives. Many women wait for certain times of the day and look for areas away from the riverbed so they can wash with a minimum of privacy, protecting themselves from prying eyes in a place where there are no walls or any kind of privacy. The situation is made even more tense by the fact that it is a border area with constant movement of people, surveillance, and activity around the river. Such a basic act as washing one's body becomes something that must be done quickly, in secret, and with the uncertainty of not knowing who might appear at any moment. These realities are invisible to those who only see a border on the map, but they explain better than any statistics what life is like on this Caribbean frontier. Along this borderline, there is a constant feeling of being in a buffer zone. It is a space of containment, where people trying to cross to the other side, informal trade, and humanitarian crises come together before moving further into the country. For the Dominican Republic, the border is a boundary that must be monitored. For many Haitians, however, the border is not an end, but an opportunity. Because right here, on this physical boundary between two worlds, there is a space where the border relaxes without disappearing entirely. A place where both countries need each other more than they admit. Strange as it may seem, in one of the most impoverished regions of the American continent, there is a place where money moves relentlessly. The binational border market is known by many as the $1 million market because every week it generates a figure that easily exceeds $1 million in commercial exchanges. It is not a tourist slogan or an exaggeration. It is the economic heart of the entire border strip. Here, people do not trade in luxuries or whims. They trade in rice, oil, flour, medicines, canned goods, and basic items that, for thousands of Haitian families, mean the difference between eating and not eating. When the border closes, prices rise almost immediately on the other side. When the market is open, tensions ease, even if only for a few hours. Dominicans and Haitians observe each other, negotiate, and haggle because they both need to. On the busiest days, tens of thousands of people cross in an orderly fashion from Haiti to the Dominican side to buy essentials. They all enter in the morning but must leave before closing time. Control is strict. They enter with temporary permission and return the same day. No one can stay. The border opens just enough to relieve the pressure and then closes again. The market is not a destination. It is a lifeline. The most striking thing is that almost nothing here has a fixed price. There are no labels. There are no signs. The value is decided in seconds, depending on who asks, how they speak, and which side of the border they come from. Language, accent, and urgency weigh as much as the product itself. It is a lively, tense, and deeply unequal economy. This space functions as an anomaly. It is a border, but it is also a makeshift hospital, a collective pantry, and an informal bank. For many Haitians, this market is the only reason life does not completely collapse. For many Dominicans, it is a constant source of income, two opposing needs that meet in the same place. But this is only the visible part, the permitted part, the part that happens when the official gates are open and the controls are working. There is another story, much quieter, that begins when the market closes and the border tightens again. Because not everyone can wait for the next market day. Not everyone has documents, time, or strength. And when the gates close, the desperation does not disappear. It changes form. This is where the story begins of those who try to go beyond the permitted crossing, of those who are not looking to trade, but to escape a suffocating reality. This story needs to be told calmly because what happens when the official crossings close is not always visible to the naked eye. Here, at this border, the body becomes a document. but not a document that is shown, but one that is hidden. And when you cannot show who you are or where you come from, situations that seem impossible begin to arise. On many of the secondary roads surrounding the border, normal cars designed for 5 people have often been found traveling with 15, 18, or even more bodies inside. People huddled together, crammed in, immobile for miles, in ways that many of us would find impossible, not by choice, but because it is the only way they know to try to go unnoticed. These are not long journeys, but they are endless. The heat, the silence, and the tension make each trip a test of endurance for them. Come to think of it, what is the maximum number of people you have ever carried or traveled with in a car? It will be very interesting to read your comments. In these cars, as you can imagine, no one talks, no one asks questions. Every bump, every sudden break, every unexpected checkpoint could mean the end of the attempt, as there are no tickets or schedules, only hope compressed into the smallest possible space. At this border, there is a place where this reality becomes visible. The bridge connecting Dajabon with Wanaminthe. The bridge that crosses the Massacre River. The only official crossing point where thousands of people can cross legally, but only when they are allowed to. On binational market days, this bridge is transformed into a human tide, as it is one of the entry points. People carrying sacks, boxes, drums, and bags advance inch by inch under the gaze of soldiers. Here, people do not cross for convenience. They cross out of necessity. When the bridge is open, the border breathes. When it closes, everything changes. Because hunger, urgency, and desperation do not understand schedules or decrees. And it is precisely at these moments that people begin to look for other routes that reveal the most uncomfortable side of this border. Because when the body is no longer visible, it no longer matters. In Haiti, the lack of hospitals, transportation, and resources means that many women have to give birth at home. Not because of tradition, but because there is no other real option. Giving birth without medical assistance becomes, for many, a daily imposition, and the next step in a story that is not yet over. Others make an even tougher decision. They cross the border while pregnant to try to give birth in the Dominican Republic, seeking medical safety, electricity, drinking water, and healthcare personnel. The journey is not always easy or safe, but for many it represents the only chance to survive childbirth. Here, the female body becomes a territory of control. Deciding where to give birth, where to live, and where to work ceases to be a personal choice and becomes a consequence of the system. As you can see and know, this border does not only separate countries, it controls lives from the first breath. And this logic of control does not stop at the legal, it goes further. It filters into the way we believe, fear, and understand the world. Because if there is one thing that profoundly differentiates these two sides of the island, it is not just the economy or infrastructure. It is the way people relate to the invisible. In Haiti, the spiritual is not an add-on. It is part of everyday life. Voodoo is not folklore or something for tourists. It is an official religion, and a way of explaining what cannot be controlled in a country where life is constantly uncertain. Voodoo has its roots in the origins of the Haitian population, in the African beliefs that came to the island with the enslaved people during the colonial era. For them, these beliefs were their way of resisting, of enduring the harshness of their environment, and of making sense of phenomena such as disease, poverty, and the forces of nature. In a country repeatedly hit by earthquakes, hurricanes, and constant crises, believing in invisible forces is not unusual. On the contrary, for many people it is a way of understanding why things happen that no one seems to be able to prevent. This view is so strong that it is even reflected in the law. The Haitian Penal Code itself mentions the figure of the zombie, not as a movie creature, but as a state in which a person loses their will due to traditional practices. It does not explain how this happens. It simply acknowledges that it exists. In the Dominican Republic, on the other hand, the relationship with spirituality is very different. The predominant religion is Christianity, and its influence is more noticeable in social norms, public morals, and what is considered correct or respectable within the community. Faith is more linked to visible behavior, reputation, and the image projected to others. This creates a society that, outwardly, is much more restrained, with unwritten rules about how to dress, how to behave, and what is expected of each person. Appearances matter, and a lot, especially when it comes to family, women, and social respect. However, that reality does not always coincide with what happens when night falls. In the urban and tourist areas of the Dominican Republic, there is an intense nightlife, with leisure, partying, and parallel circuits that do not always fit in with the morals that are preached. The difference is that, while in Haiti spirituality serves to explain chaos and coexist with the unpredictable, in the Dominican Republic religion functions more as a way of setting limits, defining what is acceptable, and maintaining a more stable social structure, although this is not always the case. We are coming to the end of this journey through one of the most contradictory islands on the planet. The same territory is shared by two very different countries, where even the way you approach the border says a lot about how people live on each side. Getting to the Dominican Republic is easy. It has several well-connected international airports, such as Punta Cana, Santo Domingo, and Santiago. From there, you can travel by road to the north of the country, especially to the city of Dajabon, one of the key points in this story. From Dajabon, it is possible to see the border bridge over the Massacre River and the surroundings of the binational market without having to cross the border. Just standing in the vicinity is enough to see how languages mix, how people flow, and how tension and need coexist within a few meters. There is one important detail. The binational market only operates 2 days a week and during very specific hours. It opens in the morning and closes in the early afternoon. Outside these hours, the border tightens and the atmosphere changes completely. On market days, the area is heavily guarded, and that is when it is most predictable to observe. There is a constant military presence and visible controls. It is not a tourist spot or a spectacle. People come here to look, to understand, and to respect. The Massacre River can be seen from different points on the Dominican side. In some places, it looks like a simple stream. In others, a line laden with meaning. It is not dangerous to observe it. The danger lies in forgetting what it represents. People do not come here to cross, they come to understand. Crossing into Haiti is another story. It is not advisable to do so without local contacts, reliable guides, and very clear planning. Not out of fear, but out of responsibility. Prices and the travel experience also vary greatly. Paradoxically, the Dominican Republic, despite being a major tourist destination, is more accessible to visitors. A night in a mid-range hotel can cost between $40 and $80. Transportation runs regularly, and services are available. In Haiti, on the other hand, shortages make basic necessities more expensive. Nothing is guaranteed, and many imported products cost more than in neighboring countries, even though local incomes are much lower. Safety is another clear difference. In the Dominican Republic, following normal recommendations, it is possible to get around with relative peace of mind. In Haiti, it is wise to be well informed, avoid unnecessary travel, and not drive at night. This is not an exaggerated warning. It is common sense. That is why traveling around this island is not just traveling. It is facing two realities that should not coexist, but do, just a few miles apart. Anyone who approaches the border understands something essential. This is not a spectacle. It is the daily life of thousands of people. And observing it with respect is the least we can do. If you also believe that reality surpasses fiction, don't miss our next trip. At Uncensored World, we continue to travel to places, investigating what almost no one dares to show, to discover reality as it is. Stay with us, because what comes next is not intended for tourists.